and welcome back to Dusty Book Sniffers. I'm Nicole, and today we're here for my weekly wrap-up. Well, good morning and good evening, everybody, no matter where you're watching from. Thank you very much for taking some time out of your day and spending it with me while I prattle on about the books that I have read. I know I have been missing in action in the last week or so. I'm sorry I didn't get a video up last week. I had a ton of noise happening out the front of my place. Everything from electric company tree loppers to next door neighbours getting fences put in and concrete poured for their driveways. And it was just so much easier not to make a video last week. Alright, so they're all gone and it's a lot quieter in the neighbourhood. We've had some wild weather in the last 72 hours. So about 72 hours. We've had flooding. We've had all sorts of things happening in Kingaroy. But I am back this week. I'm going to be talking about two books today that I've read in the past week. I do have a few other books that I've read. I've read some classics. I've read some, I finished a group read. I have also finished another series, and I'm also making my way through series. So I'm going to talk about the ones that I'm still working through first, and then I'll get on to the two books that I've read. And some of the other books that I've already finished in the last couple of weeks, I will be actually doing separate videos for them. So I will talk about them in another video. Alright, so that's why you need to make sure that you're subscribed and you've hit that little bell icon, and then that way you're not going to miss out on any of the things that I have read or I'm going to talk about. Alright, so I have not made any more progress on George Eliot's Middlemarch. I have pretty much stopped, I think, about 500 pages maybe I'm up to. I'd have to check my Goodreads to see where I'm up to. And I've just sort of stopped because I've got caught up in fantasy novels and whatnot. So I have been making my way through the Farseer trilogy, and I have actually finished the second one of that, and I'm going to talk about that in another video. I'm also still reading the second book in the Wheel of Time, so I'm part the way through that. I think I'm only into chapter 2 or 3 of that because I've started a bit late. And I also finished another series as well, and I have finished Pigwig Papers, but I'm going to talk about that in another video. So that is all the stuff that's sort of going on with books that I'm reading at the moment. And I'm also reading a couple other novels as well. I have not done the videos which I had planned to do last week for the Read Around the World. I have 3 videos to do for that, so I'm hoping to get them done this week, edited and up on the channel for you to see which books that I have read. So I've had a little bit of issues getting books from different countries. So what I've been doing is I've been going onto Goodreads or onto Google and finding just typing in the country and books translated into English from that country, and some of them are they've been a little bit problematic to get, so that sort of slowed me down a little bit on that challenge. But I have managed to get the Andorra one in, and that came, and I've read that. I've also read a couple other books that I've just got to do my final notes on it, and more information about the author, so I'm struggling with some of the information as well about the authors. And I have got my Armenian one in from... So that one I haven't started yet, but hopefully I will get to start that this week, and then I will be able to review that as well. So keep an eye out on the channel for the Read Around the World challenge videos. Excuse me. They will be going up in the next few weeks. Alright, so we're here to talk about books that I have read. So I have actually read 2 books that I'm going to talk about today. In the past week I've read them, and I'm going to start with the one that really didn't gel with me that well, and that is an Alice Hoffman book. Now this is called Here on Earth. This is following the story of March and her daughter Gwen, and they are heading back to her hometown, and she hasn't been there since she was very young. That's March, which is the lady in the story. She's heading back for a funeral because a family friend has passed away, so she's heading back with her daughter. She's having some issues, marital issues and stuff like that, so she's sort of going back to clear her head and see if she can find her way again. There is also a gentleman in this book called Hollis. Yes, Hollis. And he used to live with March when she was a child. Her father actually fostered him and took him in and looked after him, and he was a little bit problematic when he was younger, and her brother Alan really didn't like him, and they had a falling out, and the brother ended up moving out. Hollis ended up leaving. This was all when they were younger. She waited around for about 3 years because they had got very close and were romantically involved and in love with one another. But one day he just up and left, Hollis did. And so that left March there as a young girl wondering what was going on, with whether he was going to come back. And she ended up waiting for about 3 years for him to come back, until she finally decided to get on with her life, and she moved to California, where she married the next door neighbor from, his name was Richard, and she married him, the next door neighbor from her hometown. And as I said, they moved to California. They ended up having a daughter. She is now 15 years old, and she's come back. So Hollis, after he left, he actually made quite a name for himself and ended up being quite wealthy, and he's come back to the town and pretty much brought up most of the town. And her brother ended up getting married, and he ended up losing his wife in a fire, and subsequently his son ended up living with Hollis, because Alan became an alcoholic. Now, you find all this out very early on in the piece, and then the story just follows on from there. There is a little bit of violence in this, and abuse and stuff like that. Hollis is not a nice guy. I did not like him at all. And yeah, the story played out. I really liked the ending and how it all wrapped up. For a while there, I didn't think it was going to end up being a happy ending. It's somewhat of a happy ending, but yeah, I really enjoyed it for the most part for the ending. Overall, it wasn't a great book. Like, it was... like, I wouldn't say it felt like it was YA, but I wouldn't give this to a YA, like a young adult. I'd say it's more new adult than young adult, but it sort of felt that way. It was very easy to read. I sort of flew through this in no time at all. It wasn't as good as I was expecting from Alice Hoffman, because I do enjoy her books. Like, I've read her Practical Magic one, and I'm starting to read the rest of the books that she's written in that series, and I really enjoyed that book. But I think this one, it just fell flat for me. So I've only given it a 2.5 star rating. I actually rated it 3 on Goodreads, because it's closer to a 3 than it is to a 2. But yeah, I didn't enjoy it. Like, it was still a good read, but I didn't really enjoy it as much as I thought I was going to. All right, so the next one that I read is actually one out of the Book Grocer box. This is by Adele Parks, and it's the first time I've read this author. It's called Just My Luck. And I didn't actually know anything about this book when I went into it. I make a point of not reading the backs of the books or anything like that. Like, I might read the blurbs on the front, but I definitely try not to read the synopsis. So this actually came out of the Book Grocer box, as I said, and never read her before, and I thoroughly enjoyed this book. When it first started, the prologue in it seemed a little bit dark, and I didn't really know where this book was going to go, and it sort of didn't match like what was happening here on the cover. Like, the cover looks, really summery, it looks really happy, and you get really happy vibes from it, but the prologue was quite dark, and I'm like, okay, where is this going to go? So subsequently, the book is actually following Lexi, which is the main female character in the book, and also and it's broken up into a couple of, like, 2 narratives, and Emily is her daughter, and I believe from memory she's about 16 or 17, and she's also got a son, and she's married to Jake, and there's also another gentleman that's in the quite prevalent in the story called Tolma. Tolma actually, the prologue was referring to him. So basically, what you find out first off in the book, that a lady has gone to prison for, ended up getting a suspended sentence, was going to prison, but ended up getting a suspended sentence for the accidental deaths of Tolma's wife and son. So basically, what had happened was they had lived in an apartment that didn't have heating, because there was a problem with the furnace or the gas burner, and basically one night they ended up not having heating for a couple of years, and you find this later, like a couple of chapters in. They had no heating for a couple of years, and how they died was they ended up with carbon monoxide poisoning. So the gas was going in there, and so they went to sleep and didn't wake up. And Tom was at work, he come home and found him. So what happens is he ends up spiraling out of control and ends up homeless. He ends up meeting Lexi, and subsequently she's trying to help him and get back on his feet and find his way. As you would, losing your wife and child like that, you would spiral out of control, and that's what happened to Toma. So she worked for a company that was that helps homeless people get back on their feet, get employment, get housing, and all that sort of stuff. And so that's how she met him. He was sleeping outside the office one day, and she went inside, got some biscuits, come out and gave him some biscuits and started talking to him. And he used his name, he owned his name, he owned what was happening to him and all that sort of stuff. And she found that quite impressive. So she went out of her way to help him to find out, because he wanted to find out who the actual landlord was, because he didn't believe that the girl that took the fall for it was the person that was ultimately responsible for the death of his child and his wife. So she's helping him do that, and that their story is sort of going on. And in the background, something else is playing out. We've got Lexi and Jake, who have known these another two couples. They've known them for 15 years. They've played the lottery, whatever you want to call it, for 15 years since they met when their children were little. So they met at Lamar's classes, and they formed a friendship, and they've just been through thick and thin with all their kids and all the rest of it. So they had a falling out, and they played the lottery, and basically she comes home one Saturday afternoon. This is in the first chapter. She comes home on a Saturday afternoon, or I think it was a Saturday afternoon, from memory, and she comes home, and her husband is very excited and said, "Please tell me that you played the lotto, you still use those same numbers," and all the rest of it. It turns out that they have won almost 18 million pounds. So that's a lot of money. And by Australian standards, that's a lot of money. And so they've won almost 18 million pounds, and the husband, Jake, is super excited. She's like in shock. And so they ring the lottery office, and basically Lexi bought the ticket and used the same numbers that they had been using for 15 years, but the other couples had pulled out the week before. So that's also the story going on in the background. Now, I really liked the way that Lexi was quite conservative on how she was going to spend the money and all the rest of it. She wasn't over it. Like, she was excited that she won, but she was still in shock, and so she was very conservative about it. Meanwhile, her husband was such a douche. He was just like spending willy-nilly. Like, I was reading it going, what are you doing, dude? Like, I was having almost an out-of-body experience of like freaking out at this guy spending copious amounts of money. And subsequently, that was rubbing off on the kids, and they were spending willy-nilly as well, just thinking that they weren't going to school anymore and all this sort of stuff. And it was just like out of control. The three of them were out of control. Meanwhile, Lexi is trying to keep it all together. We've got the other two couples going, they're owed money and all this sort of stuff, but they had pulled out. And so basically they ended up having to prove that they had pulled out and all that sort of stuff. And then there was a whole heap of stuff that was going on around this money and some scary stuff. And it was sort of like, it made you think that, like, this could really happen. You could have these people coming out of the woodwork, finding where you live and all that sort of stuff, because some of the story centered around the publicity and the bad things that can come from that. And so and then there was this twist at the end. It was just amazing. Like, I actually really thoroughly enjoyed this. I could not put it down. It was definitely a page turner. I had like freaking out moments at the husband spending money willy-nilly. I was getting cranky at the other people, and I was just hoping that she would just end up doing the right thing and all the rest of it. And Emily was quite whiny and all that sort of stuff, but she also had a storyline as well in it, and that's why she was the second narrative of it. And it was just a great page turner for me, it was anyway, and I gave it a 4-star read. But if you like that sort of thing, a little bit of twist and a little bit of mystery, like something else is going on in the background but you're not quite sure, you'll really like this book. And I'm looking forward to actually reading some more of Adele Parks. I've went and had a look and I can't seem to get any here in Australia, so I'm going to have to look to the UK to get some of those. But I absolutely loved this book, like 4 stars for me. All right, so that is it for me today. Thank you so much for joining me. I do appreciate you taking the time to listen to me talk about the books. Hopefully you'll pick some of these books up, or at least this one. I recommend that you do pick this one up. I think you'll thoroughly enjoy it. This is getting sent off to a friend so she can have a read of it. And yeah, that's it from me today. If you've made it this far, leave me a book emoji down below. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up. And if you are a returning viewer and you've yet to subscribe, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the little bell icon, and then that way you're not going to miss out on any future posts. But as I said, that's it from me today. Have a fabulous day, everybody, and I'll see you all again next time. Bye for now.